Hey everyone, we're so happy you're joining us. My name is Sally. I run events here at Crunchbase, and I'm excited to introduce our new webinar series today, Ahead by Crunchbase. This is a multi-episode series, each featuring a specific workflow for GTM teams in under 30 minutes. We're kicking off this series with territory planning, which is certainly top of mind as we head into 2026. You can ask questions at any point using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen or click into that chat box if you want to give feedback or just say hello. Make sure you stick around until the end because I'll invite my colleagues, Nick Hill, our Enablement Director, and Liz Beavers, our Senior Product Marketing Manager, to the stage for a few key takeaways and final remarks. They live and breathe territory planning every day, both with our GTM team internally, and they experience how our customers optimize their territory planning using Crunchbase's predictive intelligence. Their insights are unique and interesting, so you definitely don't want to miss that. If territory planning is about focus, then the quality of the data you plan with matters more than anything. When that data is fragmented or stale, teams end up spending time on the wrong accounts. Reps lose confidence in their tools, and territory plans break down as the quarter unfolds. This is why Crunchbase is uniquely positioned to help. At its core, Crunchbase delivers predictive intelligence on private companies, built on nearly 20 years of best-in-class private market data and trusted by GTM leaders worldwide. That intelligence starts with a deep foundation of fundamental data, firmographics, financials, funding history, and company activity, and is strengthened by 5 integrated data pillars no other provider can replicate. This includes verified contributed and captured data, unique engagement signals from over 80 million active professionals, layered insights that show how companies are actually moving in the market, and AI-powered predictive models to forecast funding, growth, and other milestones that signal buying power and readiness before it becomes news. The result is the earliest, most reliable view into which companies are gaining momentum and which aren't. That's what makes Crunchbase so effective for territory planning. It lets you build territories around where deals are most likely to happen and not just where accounts exist. With that foundation in mind, we'll walk through what this looks like in practice. Now, the first step for good territory planning starts with truly understanding your ideal customer profile, or ICP. Now, most of you probably know or have a very strong idea of who your ICP is, but Crunchbase is the tool to help you understand which of your ICP fit accounts are ripe right now and need your attention this quarter. Before I even jump into Crunchbase, when we speak with customers, we find it's helpful to ask a few grounding questions, digging into where you've actually seen success and returns. So look at the last 12 months. Where did you sell the most? What industries showed the strongest pull? What stage or revenue band did those companies fall into? Does geography matter? Are they already using tools or technologies that are complementary to your offering? Who was the buyer persona that consistently saw value? Which customers renewed, and what was the common thread in their ICP? These questions help you narrow in on the slice of your ICP that's most likely to convert. And that's exactly the information we'll use in Crunchbase to surface and prioritize accounts for your territory. And if you feel like you know these answers instinctively, but don't yet have the data to actually back them up, don't worry. We'll show you how Crunchbase helps validate and refine these assumptions as we go. Now that we've asked the important questions and identified our ICP, let's log into Crunchbase and get our list of accounts. And we're going to do this in under 5 minutes. So I'm logged into Crunchbase, and what you see here is my homepage. Now, there's a lot of interesting information and capabilities here, but for the sake of today's episode, I'm going to pretend that all we care about is building the best possible territory for your team fast. Now, Crunchbase has over 4 million accounts, so let's narrow them down. To do so, I'm going to pull up our AI search builder. There's a lot of information here you could pull in. However, to focus your territory on where deals are most likely to happen, let's go back to those questions we used to bolster our ICP earlier. So, which industries purchased my product most in the last 12 months? Let's say that was SaaS, AI, and financial services. Now, if location or employee headcount matters, you can plug that in here too. So I typically sell best into companies that have at least 50 employees. We still have over 60,000 companies, so let's keep adding on important criteria like financials. So I typically sell best into companies that are post their seed series. So I can add that filter in right here. My strongest buyers also bring in a revenue of at least 50 million. Now, I've narrowed down this view from 60,000 companies to 600 targeted accounts, which gives us a territory that's actually focused and more likely to convert. Now, I want to make sure I'm giving my sales team all the information they need to go after these accounts. So let's enrich the territory by adding some additional data columns. You'll always want that revenue range so we can prioritize by who has the money to spend on our solution. Location, even postal code might be useful for splitting territories, description, website. This is so my account executives can easily understand what this company does and they can personalize outreach. Maybe even their LinkedIn, contact information. As mentioned, industries can be really helpful, as well as understanding how many employees that company has. Funding information like last funding date, so we can quickly see who received funding most recently and therefore has a new influx of cash to spend. Last funding type, last funding amount, total funding amount, valuation. Again, all of this can be really helpful for prioritizing your territory. And those are just a few of over 500 fields you can use to enrich and prioritize your account list in Crunchbase. Apply these changes, and boom, I have a ready, actionable territory plan for my reps within a few minutes. Now, what you see here is Crunchbase's foundational company data in action, firmographics, financials, and funding history, all continuously refreshed so the territory you build stays defensible as the market changes. To prioritize my territory, I can sort by this estimated revenue range, funding, really in any way that's valuable for your team. Now I can do a few things with this list. I can save it and share it with my reps in case they want to work directly within Crunchbase, or what most people do is click export. And voila, I have a rich, viable territory list that I can now share with my reps. What we've seen so far is how Crunchbase's foundational data helps you build a defensible territory. But to get ahead, to sell first and win more, GTM teams need to know what's likely to happen next. Now that's where Crunchbase's predictions and insights come in. Our predictive intelligence builds directly on that same foundational data by layering in signals around funding, growth, acquisitions, and more. GTM teams gain foresight into which target accounts are gaining momentum before it becomes obvious to the rest of the market. That's what enables teams to focus territories around where deals are likely to emerge, not just where those accounts exist. Let's say we only want to see companies we feel confident are going to grow or raise funding in the near future. I can layer in those predictions right here. We can also look at insights like a high growth score, which quantifies a company's current growth based on both our predictions and historical data. So now we're only surfacing companies with a very high likelihood of growth. And there you have it, a strong hit list for your reps, which gives them the first mover advantage by approaching these accounts before your competitors. So that was how you can build your territory using our software in a matter of minutes. But before I wrap up, I quickly want to talk about Salesforce enrichment. I know Salesforce is where most reps live. So rather than taking them away from their comfort zone and disrupting their workflow, imagine your AEs can immediately see a company's latest, most up-to-date financial, growth, and other fresh information directly within their Salesforce. As an example, I've pulled up my account page for AlphaSense. Now imagine you can use this information to understand which accounts you're winning with and where you're losing. Since each data point is in its own field, you can easily build reports or dashboards based on any of this information. You can also see these growth insights and funding predictions, which are not exportable from the platform. The only way you can access this outside of Crunchbase is by using our API. Now you can pursue accounts with a high funding or growth probability before your competitors are aware that they exist. As mentioned, you can then take those insights and turn them into a defensible ICP based on real data, not just hunches. In fact, those dashboards come standard with our enrichment package. Let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. With our enrichment, when you log into Salesforce, you'll see these out-of-the-box dashboards pre-built for you. For the sake of this demo, I'm using this anonymized screenshot, but this is exactly how your dashboards would look in Salesforce. A couple dashboards that are particularly helpful for defining your ICP are win rate by employee size and win rate by revenue range. A lot of companies have a gut feeling about who they're successfully selling into the most, but layering our company data over your deal data unlocks a powerful truth. Another interesting one is this average sales cycle by revenue range and average sales cycle by employee size. As you can see, those quickest wins are in that 100 to 250 range, which can be really helpful with planning and forecasting. Again, these are just the out-of-the-box examples I'm showing you, but you can build custom reports and dashboards really based on any information that's important to your team. By combining the context already in your CRM with Crunchbase's private market intelligence, teams get a clearer, more actionable view of their territory, and only Crunchbase can do this. So, when you think back to those questions we discussed at the start, this is how GTM teams move from ICP assumptions to territory confidence and focus where deals are most likely to convert. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our territory planning experts, Nick and Liz, for a few final remarks. Take it away.
Perfect. That was great. What Sally just showed is really at the core of how Crunchbase supports territory planning and what we mean when we're talking about getting ahead, that ability to move from static planning to really working towards what's next for your go-to-market team with a predictive focus. Now, whether it's validating your ICP, prioritizing accounts with upcoming funding or growth, or bringing predictive signals directly into your workflow, the goal is the same: to help teams move first, focus where it matters most, and ultimately drive revenue. And this only works because of the data foundation behind it. Sally touched on this earlier, but it's worth reiterating. Crunchbase has been tracking private companies for nearly 20 years, layering verified global sources with real time engagement signals from over 80 million active professionals. We don't just track funding events, we track the signals that lead to them. Now, that depth and signal density is really what allows go to market teams to build territories around where momentum is forming, not just where accounts exist. And that's what makes Crunchbase uniquely positioned to support territory planning in a way other solutions can't. Now, because you just saw a ton in a short period of time, I know that Nick and I are really keen on double clicking on one piece that's been especially impactful to us internally, and that's the Salesforce enrichment. You just saw how that works. But for us, this is really where things shifted in our own go to market motion. Nick, I would love for you to share a little bit about where we were, what we uncovered once we've been layering more of this enriched company data in, and really what's been changing for our team as a result of that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Liz. Crunchbase has always had an incredibly strong relationship with three different kind of ideal customer profiles. We've always been selling well with our go-to-market teams. We've talked with our investors and financiers, and we've talked with wealth and asset managers. So going into last year, those were the three ICPs that we really focused on the most. Something that really came to our attention towards the later half of the year was once we enriched our Salesforce accounts with Crunchbase data and we started to look at some of the reporting that Sally just showed everyone, we started to see the rise of this kind of fourth ICP. And with the rise of AI, we've seen a lot more product builders, people that are wanting to put Crunchbase data, verified data into their product, which was something that wasn't really on our radar. And so by taking a look at this, by taking a look at our Salesforce enrichment package, by looking at where we were actually selling and cross-referencing that with industry and funding range and employee count, we really started to see this new ICP emerge. And from that, we were able to start building territory lists. We were able to build messaging. We were able to get ahead of this ICP and begin really going after it to build pipeline coming into the later half of the year in 2026. So just one real world example of how we personally have used Salesforce enrichment to kind of bolster our own pipeline generation efforts.
I think that's so helpful. And I think for those of you tuning in, what Nick is also describing is bigger than just adjusting the way that you're looking at territory planning possibilities. It's really a huge go to market alignment shift. And I think that's another huge unlock that having access to this data to be able to map your territories provides. When you have that real enriched company data layered directly into your source of truth, like Salesforce or the CRM that you're constantly referencing, having that ICP clarity stops being a theory and becomes something that's like measurable and attainable for the teams. Sales knows who to prioritize, marketing knows who to target, RevOps knows how to design territories and scoring around what's going to actually convert. So instead of reacting to like funding announcements or executive hires after everybody else sees them, you're able to use this intelligent data, these predictive signals that Crunchbase can provide to help you move first and sell first and then win more. And I think that's where we've seen like such real impact building those territories that help ladder up to stronger pipeline, higher win rates, and better alignment across the entire go-to-market team.
Yeah, I mean, something that I would also add here, like for my go-to-market folks on the call, you know that creating a book of business, providing it in a timely manner, prioritizing it in the right way, like these are difficult things to do and they typically take weeks or months to do. So one thing that we found was really just speed and efficiency. So on the RevOps side, you're able to build these lists in a couple of minutes. I mean, it really doesn't take long to do. Like Crunchbase already has the data, we have the filters, so I can go into the software and we have plenty of demos available for you to see that live. And then the second thing is, once my account executives get this list, they know where to focus. Like AE time is incredibly valuable. So if I can give my AEs a list and say, figure out where you're going to hyper focus. What are your tier A, tier B accounts? What are the things that you're going to spend time on, like your top five? And they can go in and enrich with Crunchbase data and then say, based on what I know, based on who's about to receive funding or go public, this is who I'm going to focus on right now. So just being able to provide that clarity for those two teams has been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think you make such a great point there. And I think that's a function of both what we saw from what Sally shared with us from the Salesforce enrichment side. But I'd also say that that's a huge benefit of what we saw in the software too. There's that great degree of visibility. So you have the optionality, right? Salesforce enrichment is so powerful with Crunchbase's data because it's connecting private market intelligence directly where teams are living and working deals. But the software itself plays just as big a role as how teams can plan and execute. Now, I know you briefly touched on like the AE lens, and Sally had shared that a bit too on the territory mapping, but I'd be curious as well, like how you see that show up with other folks, like from the RevOps perspective too, and who you chat with and your team is helping support, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we think about prioritization and we think about the way that we're using Crunchbase data, our secret sauce is our predictions. So when I'm looking at predictions, I want to get ahead of my competitors. I want to be the first into their inbox. I want to make sure that when my AEs are reaching out, they're not one of 8,000 messages that these guys are getting every single day. So what we're doing is we're layering in our RevOps team specifically. We're layering in what are the predictions that are going to help me kind of, again, hyper focus on the accounts I want to reach out to, and so that I can get in front of them with the right messaging in a timely manner. And being able to see like IPO, acquisition, growth and heat scores are two ways that we do that. But all of those are helping us kind of get ahead of the competition and get into the inboxes and the LinkedIn's first. So that's something that I tend to touch on. Did that answer your question, Liz?
Totally. That makes a ton of sense. And I think, just in the spirit of we're touching so many different functions of go-to-market teams, the other point that I'll add as well is this doesn't just stop with sales. When we think about where there's the value of leveraging this data for propelling go-to-market motions forward or getting ahead, there's also the account-based marketing standpoint as well. And you kind of touched on this too with like what your inbox looks like. But having the right data behind territory planning as it relates to account-based marketing can change everything. So instead of building these campaigns across static lists, marketing has the ability to use things like you just touched on, the propensity for IPO, what does growth look like, where has there been real momentum, with target accounts that are showing those attributes, and align our outreach with where real buying power may be emerging. So there's this great opportunity using Crunchbase data, just as you guys saw today, to keep sales and marketing focused on the same high intent accounts at the same time.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say, Liz, is just that I have seen Crunchbase be incredibly effective when you put it at the very top of your tech stack. So when we think about a typical tech stack, normally you're finding your accounts, you're prioritizing your accounts, then you're enriching your leads, you're using something like a LinkedIn Sales Nav or a Zoom Info or Clay, and then you're going in and you're saying, now how am I going to reach out to them in the right way? Where Crunchbase really, really shines for a lot of go-to-market teams is that identification, that prioritization, figuring out the ICP, who am I going after first? And it really fits well into most existing tech stacks. Now, that's kind of what I tend to see in general, but what I would recommend for everyone on the call is really just like meeting with a member of our team. Give 20 minutes is really all it takes to kind of talk through your workflows, understand where this might be able to benefit you specifically, and then you can start to understand where this fits in with your specific pain points, and where we might be able to help. So that's something I'd recommend. And Liz, I think you might have a few polls teed up for these
You
guys.
buried the lead, Nick. That was a perfect way to cap off the time that we've spent both together and also with Sally's demonstration. You guys will see there is a poll that just went live. We would love to understand, just to Nick's recommendation, and what we hear so often is just the opportunity to spend more time with you and understanding your use case. So when you get a second, I'll let this poll run for a little bit. We have just a hair time left together, but we'd love to understand, how can our team best support you after our discussion around territory planning with Crunchbase? There's a number of different options that our team is more than happy to explore with you, be that going through what's the power of Crunchbase's API? How might Salesforce enrichment might work for your particular use case? Perhaps it's going through and having a more detailed discussion around how your team might benefit from Crunchbase's software. Or if you're using this individually, how this could be a great fit for what you are looking to accomplish. So answer that. Our team will certainly follow up afterwards. I'll go ahead and close that. We've got just a couple more answers coming in. And then before we end our time together, Sally mentioned this at the top of our discussion. This is a brand new series that Crunchbase has just launched, and we're looking to plan what's next in the Ahead series. So making sure that we're providing these bite-sized pieces of content with truly actionable to-dos with Crunchbase. So the last poll we have, we would love some feedback from those of you who are live on the line today. What workflow would you most be interested in seeing next for our next, I said next twice, episode of Ahead by Crunchbase. There's so many options. And if you don't see something there that might fit your appetite as a go-to-market professional, feel free to drop it in the chat. We really are working to make this something that's usable for you and your teams. So would love to hear a little bit more. But Nick, any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I don't think so. I think taking a look at the poll results coming in, I think there's some really interesting stuff that we can go take a look at. And I would also encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. We have some great content there as well that you could take a look at. But we're more than happy to show you anything you want to see. And yeah, just looking forward to the next one.
Perfect. That sounds great. Well, with that, I have ended the poll and we are about at time. If we haven't had a chance to answer your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you all directly today. But thank you all so much for your time, for your engaging questions. And we really appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one. Be good.
Thanks, Elle.